I just found out my little sister is a homewrecker. What should I do? I'm a 35-year-old woman, married, no kids, thank goodness, given the current situation, and until recently, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. Sure, work was stressful, and sometimes I felt like I was one missed deadline away from a complete meltdown, but overall, things were fine, stable, normal. Ha, normal, what a joke. Enter my sister, let's call her Homewrecker Barbie, HB for short. HB is 32, has always been the free spirit of the family, read, impulsive and irresponsible, and 5 months ago, she showed up on my doorstep, pregnant and claiming it was from a one-night stand. And because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment and have a savior complex the size of Texas, I took her in. My husband is deployed overseas for a year, so I thought, hey, why not? It'll be nice to have some company, and I can help my baby sister get back on her feet. If only you knew the chaos you were inviting into your meticulously organized life. For 5 months, everything seemed fine. Sure, HB was a bit needier than usual, and her pregnancy cravings were wreaking havoc on my carefully planned grocery budget. But I chalked it up to hormones and tried to be understanding. I even started to enjoy having her around, planning the nursery, and imagining being the cool aunt to my future niece or nephew. But then Monday happened. Monday, the day my life turned into a Lifetime movie on steroids. I came home from work, my mind already racing with all the things I needed to do, finish that report, schedule a dentist appointment, figure out what to make for dinner that wouldn't send HB running to the bathroom again. You know, normal, everyday stress. But as I pulled into the driveway, I saw something. HB and some strange woman were having a full-on screaming match on my front porch. I'm not normally one for confrontation. I prefer to solve problems with passive-aggressive post-it notes and carefully worded emails. But seeing this woman jabbing her finger at my pregnant sister's belly, oh hell no, mama bear mode, activated. I jumped out of the car, not even bothering to grab my purse. Hey, I shouted, channeling my best don't mess with me voice. What's going on here? HB's eyes went wide, and she started babbling. It's nothing, sis, just a misunderstanding. Can you please make her leave? The other woman whirled on me, her face a mask of fury and pain. Are you sleeping with my husband too? She spat. And that, dear Reddit, was how I found out that my sweet, irresponsible baby sister had been the other woman in a 5-year affair that destroyed a family of 6. I'm shaking as I type this. It's been days, and I still can't wrap my head around it. How did I not know? How did I miss the signs? And more importantly, what the hell am I supposed to do now? I need advice, support, maybe a time machine to go back and shake some sense into myself before I opened that door 5 months ago. There's so much more to this story, but I'm already at my wit's end, just reliving this part. I'll post more details soon, once I've had a glass of wine and maybe a good cry in my closet where HB can't hear me. If anyone has dealt with something like this before, please tell me how you got through it. Edit. I've had some time to collect my thoughts and finish that bottle of wine, so let me fill you in on the background of this whole mess. At the time, I didn't question her story about a one-night stand gone wrong. Why would I? HB had always been the wild child of our family, the one who'd show up to Thanksgiving dinner with a new tattoo and a guy she met at a music festival. A pregnancy from a one-night stand seemed par for the course with her. Our parents passed away a few years ago, so it's just been the two of us. I've always felt responsible for HB, always trying to guide her, protect her, and keep her from making the same mistakes over and over. I thought this pregnancy might be the wake-up call she needed to finally get her life together. For 5 months, things seemed okay. Not great, but okay. HB was moody, constantly craving weird food combinations, and spending a lot of time on her phone. But overall, I thought we were making progress. We were bonding over baby name books and nursery designs. I even started to get excited about being an aunt. I should have known it was too good to be true. I should have seen the signs. But I was so caught up in my own life, my own stress, that I missed what was right in front of me. That Monday started like any other. I went to work, dealt with the usual office drama, and headed home, mentally preparing myself for another evening of pregnancy mood swings and bizarre food requests. When I pulled into my driveway, I immediately knew something was wrong. There was a car I didn't recognize parked haphazardly on the street, and I could hear shouting from my front porch. As I got closer, I saw HB, her face red and tear-stained, backing away from a woman I'd never seen before. The woman was gesticulating wildly, her voice rising in pitch with every word. I intervened, of course. That's my sister, pregnant and clearly distressed. I sent HB inside, trying to calm the situation, but then the woman turned on me. She demanded to know if I was sleeping with her husband too. Sleeping with her husband? What was she talking about? I tried to explain that I had no idea what was going on, that there must be some mistake. But then she pulled out her phone and started showing me pictures, emails, text messages. With every swipe of her finger, another piece of my world crumbled. My little sister, smiling in selfies with a man I'd never seen. HB and the man are on vacation. HB with the man's children at the zoo. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. This wasn't a one-night stand gone wrong. This was a full-blown 5-year affair. And the man, he wasn't some random guy. He was a married father of 4, one of whom had special needs due to a car accident. The woman, let's call her Sarah, poured out the whole sordid tale. HB had known from the beginning that he was married. She'd met his kids, been to their house, all while playing the role of the fun family friend. She'd even taken the kids to the zoo for crying out loud. The affair had started 5 years ago, right after Sarah and her husband had been in a car accident that left one of their children with a severe disability. While Sarah was dealing with recovery and caring for their injured child, her husband was starting an affair with my sister. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the sister I knew. This wasn't the person I'd grown up with, the person I'd been living with for the past 5 months. How could she do this? How could she knowingly destroy a family like this? Sarah showed me more evidence, receipts for jewelry, hotel bookings, even a babamoon trip that HB and the husband had taken to celebrate her pregnancy. All while Sarah was at home, caring for their 4 children, one of whom needed constant care due to their disability. I was in shock. I apologized profusely to Sarah, assuring her that I had no idea about any of this. I promised her that no man, especially not her husband, would be welcome in my home. I got her number, if only to have some way to make amends for the pain my sister had caused. With Sarah gone, I had to face my sister. I walked into my house to find her curled up on the couch, sobbing. I confronted her with everything Sarah had told me, everything I'd seen. I waited for denials, for explanations, for anything that would make this situation less awful than it appeared. Instead, what I got was a flood of justifications and excuses that made me question whether I'd ever really known my sister at all. HB tried to paint herself as the victim, if you can believe it. She spun a tale of star-crossed lovers, of a man trapped in a loveless marriage, of promises to leave his wife when the time was right. She talked about how they were meant to be together, how she was saving him from his unhappy life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her about the children, about the wife who'd been struggling to care for a disabled child while her husband was off playing house with HB. Her response? They'll understand when they're older. We'll all be one big happy family. The delusion was staggering. I pressed her for details, trying to understand how this could have happened, how it could have gone on for so long without anyone knowing. And slowly, the whole sordid timeline emerged. It had started at a bar of all places. HB had been out with friends, drowning her sorrows after another failed relationship. He was there, alone, claiming he needed a break from the stress at home. One drink led to another, and before long they were exchanging numbers. HB swore she hadn't known he was married at first, but it only took a few weeks for the truth to come out, and instead of ending things then and there, like any decent person would, she decided to continue the affair. She convinced herself that his marriage was already over in all but name, that she wasn't really doing anything wrong. For 5 years they carried on like this. Secret meetings, stolen weekends, elaborate lies to cover their tracks. HB told me how she'd fantasized about being his wife, about being a mother to his children. She'd even started to insert herself into their lives, attending school events and family outings under the guise of being a close family friend. The pregnancy, it turned out, wasn't an accident at all. They'd been trying for months, seeing it as the final step in their plan to be together. HB truly believed that once the baby was born, he would leave his wife, and they could finally be a real family. I called HB out on her behavior, telling her in no uncertain terms that what she'd done was unforgivable. I told her she was stupid and naive for believing his lies about leaving his wife. I pointed out how she'd not only ruined a marriage but potentially traumatized 4 innocent children. HB's response? More tears, more justifications. She kept insisting that I didn't understand, that I couldn't possibly comprehend the depth of their love. She talked about destiny and soulmates, completely glossing over the devastation she'd caused. I realized then that I was looking at a stranger. This wasn't the sister I'd grown up with, the person I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. This was someone I didn't recognize, someone whose moral compass was so skewed that she could justify years of deception and homewrecking. The fight went on for hours. HB oscillated between defending her actions and begging me not to kick her out. She tried every tactic: guilt, manipulation, appeals to family loyalty, but with every word, she only succeeded in pushing me further away. I was emotionally and physically exhausted. I told HB that she could stay, not out of any sense of familial duty, but because I couldn't in good conscience put her out on the street in her condition. But I made it clear that things would be different from now on. I drew up a tenant agreement then and there, laying out strict rules for her continued stay in my home. No more family dinners, no more late-night chats, no more pretending that everything was okay. From that point on, she was a tenant, nothing more. HB signed the agreement through her tears, all the while pleading with me to understand, to forgive her. But how could I ever trust her again? HB tried to talk to me, to explain herself further, but I shut her down. I couldn't bear to hear any more justifications, any more excuses. The sister I thought I knew was gone, replaced by this stranger who could lie so easily, who could cause so much pain without remorse. And yet, life went on. The world didn't stop turning just because my family had imploded. Bills still needed to be paid, work still needed to be done, and there was still a pregnant woman in my house who needed care, regardless of how I felt about her actions. At home, the atmosphere was tense and uncomfortable. HB tried to act as if nothing had changed, chattering about baby names and nursery colors, as if we were still the happy sisters planning for a new arrival. I couldn't bring myself to engage. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was the pain she'd caused, the lives she'd ruined. I'm wondering about the man, the husband and father who'd been just as complicit in this deception as HB. What kind of person could do that to their family? How could he look his children in the eye, knowing what he was doing? I was torn between wanting to confront him, to make him face the consequences of his actions, and never wanting to see his face for fear of what I might do. And so, here I am, Reddit, pouring out my heart to strangers on the internet because I don't know where else to turn. My sister's 5-year affair has destroyed not just one family, but 2, and I'm left picking up the pieces, trying to figure out how to move forward in a world where nothing makes sense anymore. Update 1. Reddit. I thought I had reached the depths of this nightmare, but I was wrong. So wrong. The universe, it seems, wasn't content with the devastation already wrought. No, it had to twist the knife even further. Sarah reached out to me. My phone buzzed at 2 a.m., jolting me from a fitful sleep filled with dreams of shattered families and crying children. It was a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Can we meet?" I knew I had to face this, to confront the full extent of the damage my sister had caused. With trembling fingers, I replied, "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Rosewood Cafe." The next morning, I arrived at the cafe half an hour early. When Sarah walked in, a woman was hollowed out by grief, her eyes sunken and ringed with dark circles, her clothes hanging loosely on a frame that had clearly lost weight rapidly. She told me about her family, not just the bare facts I already knew, but the intricate, heartbreaking details that made them real people, not just victims in a sordid drama. Jack, their oldest at 15, was a budding athlete whose dreams of a sports scholarship now lay in tatters as he struggled to cope with his family's implosion. Emma, 12, a quiet bookworm who had stopped reading entirely, retreating into a shell of silence and barely suppressed rage. Then came the twins, Liam and Sophia, just 8 years old, too young to fully understand what was happening, but old enough to feel the seismic shifts in their family dynamic. And finally, there was Noah, their 6-year-old. Noah, who had been in the car during that fateful accident 5 years ago. Noah, who had suffered a traumatic brain injury that left him needing round-the-clock care. Noah, whose father had begun an affair while he lay in a hospital bed, fighting for his life. As Sarah spoke about Noah, her voice cracked, and I watched in horror as this strong woman crumbled before my eyes. She told me about the countless nights spent in hospital corridors, the grueling therapy sessions, the small victories that felt like miracles, all while her husband was sneaking off to be with my sister. The affair hadn't just destroyed a marriage, it had shattered an entire family unit. Jack was acting out, getting into fights at school. Emma had developed an eating disorder. The twins were having nightmares, clinging to Sarah as if afraid she too would disappear. And Noah, in his limited understanding, kept asking when Daddy was coming home, unable to grasp that Daddy had chosen another family over them. By the time Sarah finished speaking, we were both in tears. The enormity of what HB and this man had done hit me with the force of a tsunami. I left that meeting feeling like I was drowning in guilt and secondhand shame. How could I ever look at HB the same way again, knowing the depth of pain she had caused? Returning home after my meeting with Sarah felt like stepping into a war zone. HB was in the living room, her hand resting on her swollen belly. I couldn't bear to look at her. Every glance in her direction sent images of Sarah's tear-stained face flashing through my mind. The changes in our living arrangement were immediate and drastic. I converted my home office into a bedroom, moving HB's things there without a word. The pregnant sister I had once doted on was now a stranger, a harbinger of destruction I could barely stand to be around. Our interactions became cold, clinical. Gone were the late-night ice cream runs and giggly baby name brainstorming sessions. Instead, we communicated through curt text messages and hastily scribbled notes left on the kitchen counter. Doctor's appointment at 3, need a ride, rent due, leave check on table, out of prenatal vitamins, please restock. HB tried, oh how she tried, to bridge the chasm between us. She'd corner me in the kitchen, eyes brimming with tears, voice trembling as she begged for understanding. Please, sis, she'd plead. I know I messed up, but I need you. We're family. Family. The word tasted like ashes in my mouth. What did family mean when you could destroy another so callously? I'd look at her, this woman wearing my sister's face, and feel nothing but a cold, hard knot of resentment in my chest. Her attempts at reconciliation grew more desperate as the days wore on. She'd leave little gifts outside my bedroom door, my favorite chocolates, a book by an author I loved, even a framed photo of us as kids. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. I was in the backyard, aggressively pruning my rose bushes as if I could somehow cut away the tangled mess my life had become, when I heard the doorbell ring. Annoyed at the interruption, I stomped to the front door, pruning shears still in hand. I swung the door open, and there he stood, the man, the husband, the father, the destroyer of worlds. He was ordinary, unremarkable. If I had passed him on the street, I wouldn't have given him a second glance. But now, knowing who he was, what he had done, he seemed to radiate an aura of destruction. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I saw his eyes flick to the pruning shears in my white-knuckled grip, and a flicker of fear crossed his face. Good. He started speaking, a rush of words tumbling out. He had left Sarah. He was here for HB. They were going to be a family. He would make things right. Make things right? How could he possibly make right the devastation he had caused? At that moment, I understood how crimes of passion happened. My grip tightened on the shears, and for a heartbeat, I imagined lunging forward, imagined making him feel just a fraction of the pain he had inflicted on others. But then I heard a gasp behind me. HB stood there, one hand on her swollen belly, eyes shining with joy and trepidation. The sight of her snapped me back to reality. I turned back to the man, my voice low and dangerous. Leave, I hissed. Leave now, or I swear to God I will call the police. He tried to argue, tried to push past me to get to HB, but I stood my ground, the pruning shears raised like a weapon. I said leave, I shouted, loud enough that I saw curtains twitching in neighboring houses. Finally, he backed down. As he turned to go, he looked past me to HB. I'll be back, he promised. We'll be together soon. I slammed the door in his face, my entire body shaking with rage and adrenaline. When I turned around, HB was crying, accusations spilling from her lips. How could I do this? How could I keep her from her love, the father of her child? How could I? I whispered, my voice rising with each word. How could you? How can you stand there, knowing the lives you've destroyed, and still think you deserve a happy ending? HB recoiled as if I'd slapped her, her tear-streaked face a mask of shock and hurt. Good, I thought viciously. Let her hurt. Let her feel just a fraction of the pain she's caused. If you want to be with him, I spat. Fine, go, but not in my house, not under my roof. I will not be party to this obscenity any longer. I stormed past her, locking myself in my room, deaf to her pleas and sobs. My hands shook as I dialed Sarah's number, warning her that he had surfaced. Her quiet thank you before she hung up felt like absolution and condemnation all at once. News, as they say, travels fast. But scandal? Scandal travels at the speed of light. The grocery store clerk who suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. The neighbor who stopped mid-wave, hand frozen in the air as recognition dawned. Then came the Facebook messages, old friends reaching out. I heard about your sister. Is everything okay? Do you want to talk about it? No, Karen from high school. I do not want to discuss my family's implosion over Messenger. Thank you very much. But social media was just the tip of the iceberg. The real storm hit when HB and I ventured out to the local mall for some maternity clothes. We were in the food court, HB happily munching on a pretzel when I heard it. A loud, clear voice cutting through the ambient chatter. Homewrecker? I froze, praying I had misheard. But then it came again, louder this time. Homewrecker. Have you no shame? I turned to see a woman I vaguely recognized from our neighborhood. She was pointing directly at HB, who had gone pale, her pretzel slipping from suddenly limp fingers. You destroyed a family, the woman continued, her voice rising. Those poor children. How do you sleep at night? People were staring now, a circle of shocked faces forming around us. I could see phones coming out, no doubt capturing this juicy bit of small-town drama for posterity. I should have defended HB, should have told this woman to mind her own business, should have gotten us out of there with some shred of dignity intact. But I didn't. I couldn't, because every word she said was true. So I stood there, frozen, as this stranger laid bare all the ugly truths I had been grappling with for weeks. I watched as tears welled up in HB's eyes, as she curled in on herself, one hand protectively cradling her belly. It was only when I saw a glob of spit land on HB's cheek that I snapped out of my daze. Homewrecker or not, that was my little sister. I grabbed her arm and all but dragged her out of the mall, the woman's invectives and the murmurs of the crowd following us like a storm cloud. Sure enough, the fallout was swift and merciless. My phone began blowing up with messages from HB's friends, or rather, ex-friends. I can't be associated with someone like that. One message read, what if people think I condone what she did? What if she goes after my husband next? That last part made me laugh, a harsh, bitter sound that scared even me, as if HB was some sort of husband-stealing succubus, rather than a deeply flawed, selfish woman who had made a series of terrible choices. But the laughter died in my throat when I realized that's exactly how people would see her now, how they would see us, the cheater and the sister who harbored her. I had spent years building a reputation in this town. I was the responsible one, the pillar of the community. I volunteered at the local animal shelter, organized fundraisers for the school. Hell, I was even on the planning committee for the town's annual festival. Now, all of that was crumbling before my eyes. I felt it in the sudden silence that fell when I walked into a room, saw it in the way mothers pulled their children closer when I passed on the street, heard it in the quickly stifled whispers that followed in my wake. That's her, the sister. Can you believe? I heard that she knew all along. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The final straw came when I was quietly asked to step down from the festival planning committee. We just feel, the chairwoman said, not quite meeting my eyes, that given the current situation, it might be best if you took some time for yourself, away from the public eye, you understand? I understood. All right. I was being erased, excised like a tumor from the body of our tight-knit community. And through it all, a small, traitorous voice in the back of my mind whispered, this is HB's fault. She did this to you. She ruined everything. I hated that voice, hated the kernel of truth in it, hated the way it made me look at my sister, my hurting, pregnant, desperately misguided sister, and see not family, but the architect of my destruction. When I drove home, I made a decision. I wouldn't hide. I wouldn't shrink. Let them whisper. Let them stare. I knew the truth, and I would face it head on. But oh, Reddit, it's so much easier said than done. HB, for her part, became a virtual recluse. She stopped leaving the house entirely, having her prenatal checkups via telemedicine and ordering everything online, but the worst was yet to come. It was a sunny Tuesday afternoon when I got the call from my boss. We need to talk, he said, his voice grave. Can you come in early tomorrow? I knew, with a sickening certainty, what was coming. Sure enough, the next morning I found myself sitting across from him, listening to phrases like company image and public relations concerns and mutual agreement to part ways. In other words, I was being fired because of my sister's scandal. I was losing my job because of an affair I wasn't even involved in, while the actual cheaters seemed to be facing no professional consequences at all. I packed up my desk, ignoring the pitying looks from my now former co-workers. I felt the last threads of my old life slipping away. And that, Reddit, is where I am now. I know this post is already a novel, but it feels like I've barely scratched the surface of the chaos and pain of the past few weeks. There's so much more. The legal implications, the impending birth, the constant fear of running into Sarah or her children in town. So I turn to you, internet strangers. Have any of you weathered a storm like this? How do you find the strength to face another day when it feels like the whole world is against you? Update 2, maybe the last one. I thought I had reached my breaking point before, but I was wrong. So wrong. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, the universe decided to prove me wrong in the most spectacular way possible. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had spent the morning half-heartedly scrolling through job listings, trying to muster up the energy to care about rebuilding my shattered career. The irony wasn't lost on me. I decided to take a break, to clear my head with a walk around the neighborhood. I returned home an hour later, feeling slightly more human than I had in weeks. As I approached my front door, I noticed an unfamiliar car in the driveway. I knew with a sickening certainty who that car belonged to. I burst through the front door, my worst fears confirmed. There, sitting on my couch, in my living room, was him, the husband, the cheater, the destroyer of families. And next to him, looking for all the world like the cat that got the cream, was HB. They looked up at my entrance, and I saw a flicker of guilt cross HB's face. But him? He had the nerve to smile at me. To smile. What the hell? I managed to choke out, each word dripping with fury. HB started to speak, her hand protectively cradling her swollen belly. Sis, please, just let me explain. Explain? I laughed, and the sound was harsh and foreign to my own ears. Explain what, exactly? How you've brought this homewrecker into my home? After everything that's happened, the man, I refused to use his name, refused to grant him that level of humanity, stood up, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Look, I know this is a shock, but shock, I interrupted, my voice rising with each word. Shock? You think this is just a shock? It was then that I noticed the suitcases. 3 large suitcases, neatly stacked by the stairs. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Are you planning to stay here? I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. HB nodded, her eyes pleading. Just for a little while, sis. Until we can find our own place. He's left Sarah for good this time. We're going to be a family? A family? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. A family? Tell me, HB, what about Sarah's family? What about Jack and Emma and the twins? What about Noah? I saw her flinch at the names, saw the man shift uncomfortably. Good. I hoped it hurt. I hoped the guilt ate them alive. You don't get to play happy families, I continued, my voice rising again. Not here, not in my home, not after everything you've done. HB started to cry, big gulping sobs that once upon a time would have broken my heart. Now they only fueled my anger. Please, she begged. Where else can we go? We have nowhere else. Nowhere else, I screamed. Nowhere else. How about the home you destroyed, HB? How about you go live in the house where Sarah is trying to hold her family together? How about you go explain to Noah why his daddy isn't coming home? The man tried to interject, stepping towards me with his hands still raised. Now, let's all calm down. That was the last straw. Get out, I roared, pointing at the door. Both of you, get out of my house right now. They stared at me, shocked into silence. HB's tears flowed freely, and the man looked like he couldn't quite believe what was happening. But the baby, HB whimpered, her hand on her belly. You should have thought about the baby before you decided to become a homewrecker, I said, my voice cold. Now get out. You have 5 minutes to grab whatever you can carry, and then I'm calling the police. HB burst into fresh tears, but the man finally seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation. He quickly grabbed 2 of the suitcases, ushering HB towards the door. This isn't over, he said as they passed me. We'll be back. You can't just throw your pregnant sister out on the street. I laughed, and the sound was ugly and bitter. Watch me. The door slammed behind them, and suddenly the house was quiet. Too quiet. I stood there, shaking with adrenaline and rage, staring at the closed door. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor, my back against the door, lost in thought. The buzz of my phone finally roused me. It was a text from HB. How could you do this to me? To us? I'm your sister. I'm carrying your niece or nephew. How can you be so cruel? My fingers flew over the keyboard as I typed out my reply. How could I? How could you, HB? How could you destroy a family? How could you look at those children, play with them, knowing you were tearing their world apart? How could you lie to me for 5 years? You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. I hit send, then immediately blocked her number. I couldn't deal with this anymore. I couldn't be her support system, her safety net, her enabler. Not anymore. 3 days after I had thrown them out, I came home to find HB and the man sitting on my front porch. HB was crying, one hand on her belly, the perfect picture of the abandoned, pregnant damsel in distress. The man stood as I approached, his face a mask of concern and righteousness. We need to talk, he said, as if he had any right to make demands of me. I stood there, keys in hand, staring at them. I felt like I was watching the scene from outside my body, a detached observer in my own life. No, I said simply. We don't. HB's sobs grew louder. Please, she begged. We have nowhere else to go. We've been sleeping in the car. I'm pregnant. I need a real bed, proper food. Please, sis, don't do this to me. For a moment, just a moment, I wavered. This was my little sister after all. The girl I had. You have plenty of places to go, I said, my voice steady. You can go to a hotel. You can go to one of the many friends and relatives who have been blowing up my phone on your behalf. Or better yet, why don't you go explain to Sarah and her children why their husband and father won't be coming home? HB flinched as if I'd slapped her. The man stepped forward, his face darkening with anger. Now listen here, he began, but I cut him off. No, you listen, I snapped. You two made your choices. You chose to have an affair. You chose to destroy a family. You chose to lie and sneak around for 5 years. And now you're choosing to play the victims instead of facing the consequences of your actions. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. I want you both to listen very carefully. You are not welcome here. Not now, not ever. If I come home and find you on my property again, I will call the police and have you charged with trespassing. Do you understand? They stared at me, shock written across their faces. I don't think they had ever seen this side of me before. Hell, I'm not sure I had ever seen this side of me before. But the baby, HB whimpered, making one last attempt at manipulating me. I hope, for that baby's sake, that you two get your acts together, I said softly. I hope you realize the pain you've caused and make amends. I hope you become better people. I stepped around them and unlocked my front door. Before I went inside, I turned back to them one last time, but you'll have to do it without me. Goodbye, HB. I hope one day you understand why I had to do this. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it as I heard them arguing on the porch. Eventually, their voices faded, and I heard a car start and drive away. The house was quiet once more, but this time, the silence didn't feel oppressive. It felt peaceful, as if a storm had finally passed, leaving calm in its wake. I took out my phone and, with shaking fingers, dialed a number I had memorized but never used. It rang twice before a tired voice answered. Hello, Sarah? It's me. I'd like to help. With the divorce, with anything you need, if you'll let me. There was a long pause, and for a moment I feared she would hang up. But then she spoke, her voice thick with unshed tears. I'd like that, thank you. My sister had made her choices. Now it was time for me to make mine.